Same thing over and over again.
A bit like Groundhog Day.
The Gardner, Uber. We'll see if we can talk about the Scarborough subway as well. It's 13 minutes after 6 on CBC Radio and CBC Television. Forget about finding a table in the hottest restaurant or scoring Blue Jays tickets. For some parents, the most difficult spot to secure is in the registration queue for community rec programs. Every season, they wake up early, hit the phone redial button, their computer refresh button, often at the same time, until they manage to enroll for programs of their choice. Yesterday, we heard how difficult this is. We heard from one couple, Lada Darovich and Kieran McMillan, who were trying to sign up their eldest daughter.
I woke up a little late. It was maybe 2-3 minutes after 7 already, and went downstairs, and Lada was already, I could hear her clicking and swiping the iPad. And so I joined her, and I sat on the floor with the iPad, and she got onto the phone.
I started dialing with my left hand on the phone and kept going on the computer, and the website just kept loading. We kept getting the same sort of message saying, please try again, please try again. So I started to panic around 7:30. I'm like, we're not going to get her in. She's going to hate me.
This sentiment was mirrored and echoed by so many of our listeners. They were in the midst of preparing to make those calls and get on the laptop and the iPad and whatever other technology they could find to try and get their children registered. So after we heard from Lada and Kieran, here's a little bit of what we heard from you through the Voxbox.
I'm Jennifer Martin. My morning started early because of registration for my kids for swimming lessons. My strategy, I have an iPad, I have a cell phone, and I have my landline all set up. I have numbers highlighted, I have my reading glasses very nearby, and I set my alarm to get at 6 minutes before I'm supposed to be registering so I can make sure I'm all organized. I make sure my husband is on board so he can take the cat off my lap and I can make payment, and I do it so that I can register my kids for swimming. Those are my strategies.
Hi, my name is Ellen Warwick. It is so frustrating, and every parent knows this. And one of the most frustrating things is that swimming lessons are very hard to get into, and spots are very limited because they can only hold so many swimming classes in a pool at a time. And so in our neighborhood, for my daughter's level, she's 6, there are 3 classes that hold 4 kids each. So 12 kids are going to get in. And so when I start calling at exactly 7 a.m., I know there's a good chance we won't get in. And most of the time we won't. We did this past weekend, which is a miracle, but she hasn't actually been in swimming class for over a year because of this. The other thing that's really frustrating is, why does it have to be at 7 a.m.? It means that on a weekend you have to get up at 6:30 and get your computer ready and your phone and all this stuff. It's terrible. How about 8? How about 9? That would be great. How about letting the parents just sleep in a little?
This term we're delighted because our program has moved to a different community center where we have to pay. I've never been so happy to pay because previously it was at a community center where it was free because of the neighborhood, and therefore the attempts to register were many-fold worse than I anticipate they are tomorrow. So yay, never been so happy to have to pay.
Some of your thoughts on just how difficult it is to sign up for community rec programs. It does not need to be this way, at least according to my next guest. Mark Richardson, an IT consultant, has pitched his city councillor and city committees on what he thinks is a better way of doing things. He's with me in studio now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why is this system so screwed up?
Well, if you listen to the voices of the people who were just on your backgrounder there, they're not voices of diversity in Toronto. They're middle class. They're white voices. And we're not providing services to the people who really need them because we limit capacity. And we limit capacity because we subsidize every program, no matter the people's ability to pay.
So why does that matter if the voices that we hear, if what we hear back from people is from a small constituency, from the middle class, as you say? Because
the city has built programs where, if you look in the first 4 pages of the fund guide, those low prices, HST is already included in those prices. Your credit card processing fee is already included in those prices. And that's 20% of that cost has gone out the door. There's also almost a $40 per child per program subsidy that comes out of the city's general coffers. So the only way they can limit the amount of money that they lose per program is by limiting capacity. So that example of 12 swimming spots for 6-year-olds.
It's interesting. We also heard, speaking to your demographic issue, from a number of people who said, well, what if you don't have all of these pieces of technology? What if you have a phone, but you don't have computer access at home? You're out of luck because you do need all of those things laid out in front of you, kind of operating at the same time to try and get one of those 12 swimming spots.
And if you're the 7-year-old single mom in Danzig, you're not able to do that at 7 a.m. because you're already on a TTC bus to work.
And so how would you change this? You seem to have, and you've talked about this before, you seem to believe that you have the idea on how to reform this system that so many people love to hate and hate to love. So how are you going to change it?
It all comes down to money, as all the things in Toronto Council do. We in Toronto operate our recreation programs in a way that no other city in the country does. No other city in the province does. We subsidize everybody. We have a subsidy for all program. Makes us feel good, but the outcomes aren't what we intend them to be.
How do we compare to other cities when it comes to managing how people get into these programs and how the programs themselves work?
Ottawa and Mississauga have both recently done reviews of their programming, and what they do, like Variety Village, like the YMCA, is they charge cost recovery on their programs, but they based their discounts and subsidies based on an ability to pay model. So if you're in Toronto Public Housing, you get a certain amount of money that you can put against programs. Certain places like Variety Village, they have 2 registration dates. You register if you're a disadvantaged or special needs group 3 days before they open up to everybody else.
And so your suggestion is that we all pay more, and that would create more spaces?
Correct, because right now we lose money on every program. So in 2011, they were talking about closing centers, and I couldn't figure out how they were going to close my community center when people were fighting to get in. The economics of it just didn't make any sense.
So this is about, again, not changing just the process, but that if you create more spaces, that bottleneck that people go through, like they went through yesterday at 7:01 a.m., is not going to exist because there are more spaces available.
Correct. Because what happens is, in any other system, if you sold out a show, if you sold out a concert, you'd add another concert. But because we lose money on every person who walks through the door, we limit the capacity within Toronto Recreation.
One of the things that makes Toronto Recreation so successful and makes the programs that are offered so interesting is that they are cheap and affordable. That there are a lot of people who couldn't otherwise send their kids off to a summer camp or to swimming lessons because the prices are exorbitant to their budget. You look at the City of Toronto, you can send your kid off to a summer camp for a reasonable amount, that the swimming lessons are a reasonable amount. Dance classes are fairly cheap. Isn't that a good thing, that you make sure that it's open to everybody?
It is an inherent good. It is a fantastic thing, and we would love to have more capacity. But we are subsidizing downtown facilities, a majority of downtown facilities, where the demographics have changed since amalgamation. The pockets of poverty that are around this city are more out in the inner suburbs. So we're subsidizing places like Leslieville. Jimmy Simpson in Leslieville is still classed as a priority center. Should a priority center and an organic dog food store be within 100 feet of one another?
So if you raise the prices, then aren't you going to cut certain families out of this process?
We've already cut those families out because they don't have 3 computers, 2 cell phones. The problem is that we're building a system currently that's about optics, not outcomes.
But would there be subsidies for those families?
Huge subsidies.
Okay.
Take my $40 for every program that I've given to my kids, improve the Welcome program, extend the Welcome program, like Ottawa does, like Mississauga does, like Vancouver does.
You've raised this, as I mentioned, with your city councillor, but also in front of city committees that have been trying to deal with this. What's the response been like?
On camera or off camera? Everybody knows what the fix is, but it's political kryptonite because the headline on the newspapers the next day is 100% increase in recreation fees and children will drown. And you can't deal with those politics. Like everything at City Hall, it's about optics, not outcomes.
So you believe that there's no traction because it's politically dangerous to look like you're cranking up fees for rec programs?
Well, in 2008, David Miller and Joe Mihevik, not exactly, raging right-wingers, suggested something called Everybody Gets to Play, which is the model that we're talking about. And they promoted it at that time to improve access to programs for disadvantaged areas by charging more to people who could pay for them. And between a mix of downtown councillors and some people in the suburbs who wanted to beat up on David Miller, that idea died, and no one's been willing to touch it since.
And so for the parents, just finally, who were up yesterday at 7 a.m., dialing, pushing refresh, etc., what's your prognosis on whether this is going to change or not?
Call your counselor and say, I'm willing to pay $20 more per program in order to increase capacity and provide more access to recreation in the city.
All right, Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Richardson, an information technology consultant, father of two. He has faced in his own family and household frustrations in enrolling his kids in community rec programs. He was talking about his solution, what he thinks would make this process easier. Pay a little bit more, create more programs, and then subsidize those who can't afford to pay a little bit more. Your thoughts on this? 416-205-5807, Twitter @Metro Morning. It's